Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is Cameron Bell. I am your host, as always, on our extra show. I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas. Hope you had some great festivities. And joining me, and this is a belated Christmas present for you all, is joining me on this week's show is my very good friend, Andy McGowan. Andy, thank you very much for coming on. Did you have a wonderful Christmas?
I had a wonderful Christmas, Cammy. It was just idyllic. It was like something out of a movie.
What, Die Hard or It's a Wonderful Life?
Gremlins.
Yeah, there's probably a few people listening to this that I think could relate to that as well. But Andy, Christmas has been and gone. We've got all that madness out of the way. So thankfully, we've just got a really quiet weekend ahead of us in the build up
Yeah.
to the new year. I joke, of course, because on Saturday afternoon, Rangers take a trip across the road as we head to Parkhead for the second league encounter of the Old Firm of the season. Andy, we're going to go through loads of different things in the build up to this, but we're recording this on Friday afternoon. Tell me where your battle fever is at the moment.
My battle fever died a long time ago. I'm Mr. Cool. It's about 4. It'll peak around 7 at 12 o'clock tomorrow, and then I'll just ice in the veins, fire in the belly, as Neil McCann used to say.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And Andy joining, diverting church water, the magical powers of coffee, Rangers produced more conspiracy mechanisms by creating weather conditions that meant the A9 was shut down, which meant Ross County couldn't travel to Ibrox for our midweek game. Obviously, doing this purposefully to allow us more recovery time to build up to the Old Firm. Um, it's interesting to hear all of these brilliant conspiracy theories that have meant certain clubs have won like 12 out of the last 13 championships. It's the worst conspiracy ever. But all joking aside, I did laugh when I heard people talking about, oh, well, Rangers now have got more time to recover. We could have 6 months and some of our players would still be injured.
Hmm.
We're close to having to create artificial implants, I think, for some of them and dress them up like the $6 million man. But all joking aside, how were you feeling when you heard that Ross County game had been postponed? Because I kind of flitted between the two. I wasn't sure if I was happy because it was more recovery time, a little bit. I'm not going to say relaxation because I know that the players still trained. They probably still went through the usual regime. But equal at the same point, it's one less game. You want to maintain the match fitness, etc. And you know that that's two different things.
Well, first of all, I'm not letting the $6 million man reference pass because I get a slag in every podcast I do for out of date and archaic references, and that is just top 10 I've ever done, Cammy. So well done. $6 million man. Even inflation doesn't cover that. So to answer your question, I was not too bothered about the cancellation of that game because for a purely personal point of view, I'm sure I wasn't the only Rangers fan that was looking out the window and thinking, do we really need to go out in that? As much as we love the Rangers and love going to Ibrox, and we would have, but it wasn't the most nice, night to go out. And you're kind of on the ball about injuries. I don't think we can. We'd probably get injured opening presents Christmas morning just now. So although it'd be nice to get 3 points on the board and just get a wee bit closer to them and potentially going top at Parkhead if we got a victory, I think over the piece I wasn't too bothered. Avoiding more injuries, giving a wee bit more recovery time to some of them that might have been playing through the pain barrier, and I managed to stay in with my elasticated trousers on and watch telly.
I think some of our players could get paper cuts just opening up Christmas presents at the moment. It's just how the luck has gone against us, as you say. But I think an interesting one because earlier on Friday morning we had the manager's press conference. And I'll be honest with you, Andy. Obviously, we were looking for a bit of an update because rumours have kind of started to get around that apparently Barisic and Yilmaz are both injured. He didn't make mention of that. We weren't given any specifics on Lundstrom. We are told that Connor Goldson has trained. And the manager more or less, I think, tried to kind of cut through all of that by saying, we'll make an assessment tomorrow, as in Saturday. Um, I am interested to see what that lineup is going to look like, because I know that we went into it with obviously a pretty ragtag midfield. We knew that that was obviously going to be the case. Goldson coming back purely from his experience and being available for this game, and making sure that he was fit for it is massive for us for sure. Um, and I've heard counter argument about whether or not you would have Barisic in there or Yilmaz. We could put Sterling in there, but I think doing too good a job in midfield. Maybe Adam Devine comes. I genuinely don't know how we've sought that particular puzzle out. There's another part of me that also thinks, from a selfish perspective, I can see past Kilmarnock next week. So therefore, if you've got players who can play, and even if they've got 60 minutes in them, 70 minutes in them, let them play it. And then, like I say, we'll focus in Kilmarnock next week when we have to, and then we've obviously got the break. So for me, he's going to have to try and piece together a team that ultimately is going to go out there to compete. And I'm incredibly comfortable that Philippe Clement will do that, because he absolutely wants to win every single point he can get his hands on.
Aye, the press conference kind of posed more questions and answers because, as you say, the left back rumour is. I mean, you can say what you want about Barisic or Yilmaz. We want one or the other in the squad rather than somebody shoehorned in at the last minute. I do think Barisic is getting a wee bit of raw deal this season. I think he's been one of our better players over the piece. I don't really care what anybody says about that. Under Beale, he was one of the few guys that was coming out with any semblance of credit, if you could even go that far. And he contributes at moments, and I know he's not had the best of times at Parkhead, but the cup final proved that all it takes is a wee bit of quality for the wing, and you can get something from him. Yilmaz has been kind of, I don't know. I think he's still finding his feet as a Rangers player. He's not had a run of games, and then he gets injured. And if he is injured, then this is a perfect example of durability. But we're entering a really important game, and as your backup left back, probably just now, certainly since Clement came on, and he's no fit, and you're like, what do we? How does this happen? What is the? It's certainly no training. I don't think we train him to the degree where they're risking injury. I think it's about the body, about his body. So you're right, mate. You say it could be Devine, it could be Sterling, but Sterling's been influential in the middle of park. The Lundstrom questioning comes in because if Lundstrom's playing, do we need to play Sterling there? Could you see Ryan Jack come in? I don't know if he's anywhere close to fat. I doubt it. So there's a wee bit of jigsaw puzzle to be completed there with Clement, but what he has done throughout the whole period is he's handled the conundrums placed on him by injuries in the Euro squad, limitations. He's handled it really, really well. I think he's handled the squad extremely well. I think the only misstep he's had is starting Kamar Roof that game that he got injured. I think he should have remained on the bench. So we go to Parkhead in good spirits, but it's going to be a monumental task because of what we're just talking about. We've not got a full 11, a full 18, nowhere close to it. Lundstrom is key for me. I'm pretty hopeful he'll play because if it's an impact injury, we've all been there, Cammy, whether it's playing football or your wife getting your deed leg, it's the
Aye.
same. You can sometimes play through that, whereas if it's a joint issue or a wee crack in a bone or something like that, then that's a far harder thing to play through. So I'm hopeful he'll be fit because he's been instrumental under Clement. He's been absolutely central to everything that Clement's achieved so far. It's been more than a renaissance for him. And as I say, that'll dictate whether Sterling, because I quite like Sterling middle of park, I've got to say, and I'd quite like him in the middle of park tomorrow because I think he covers a lot of ground and imposes himself. And while he's no maybe get the quality on the ball that will see him play there long term, he's got enough to keep the ball ticking over. So there's a lot going on there, Cammy. Goldson is a big thing for us. They at the same time have lost Carter Vickers by looks at, and that's a big thing for them. Equally, I think he's a bit of a rock for them, and I would like to see us test their centre half pairing, which if going, but what was it the other day? It was Welsh and Scales.
Yeah.
That's got to be gettable, you know.
It has to be, but I mean, listen, you're 100% right, and I think the 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 thing for me, right, in terms of Sterling, because um, we were talking about this last weekend when we were. I think looking at how he was going to assess within that midfield, what the what the layout was going to be. And I think, as we'd spoken about after the Motherwell game, what I really liked about Sterling was that he looks up and he plays quick passes. Now that's actually something you see Clement has implemented in the team, right? We
Mm-hmm.
play the ball at pace, nice and quick. And listen, it's not perfect. I'm not saying for a single minute it is, because you can sometimes see players just a slight mistouch, a slight lapse in concentration, wherever they lose control of the ball, and then that's it. But they're moving it faster and we're scoring goals as a result of that. The Cantwell goal in particular, I felt, was one that evidenced that. And Sterling, I think, likes to be able to try and have a look up, and it's almost as if Clement has seen that. I'm assuming that he's seen that within training, and he's seen his passing range and ability, and that he can do what he needs him to do within the middle of the park. And to take on your point as well about John Lundstrom, Philippe Clement has brought back Thursday night John Lundstrom for us, right? So he's that pivotal. And if you could get a performance like that out of him at Parkhead on Saturday afternoon, then I think that we've got a real solid chance. But again, we put all that with a touch of kind of caution, because it sounds, as you've rightly just said there, that both teams will have some injury concerns. I think we need to be able to try and go and capitalise on it. And I think, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, Celtic will start. I think Celtic will try and start fast. I think they'll try and come out the traps pretty strong with this. What worries me, and I'm keen to kind of get your thoughts on this, is for guys like Sterling being able to try and think about that, and some of these players not wholly experienced their Old Firm games, is just to make sure that they don't get overawed by that. They have to kind of absorb it a little bit. And that's where, if you look larger scale, potentially Barisic, again, experienced within Old Firm games, guys like Ryan Jack, Kamar Roof, these guys who have had that experience, them not being available, it's a bit like a double dunt, because experience can be massively important in these games as well.
I'm heartened by the way we handled the first 20 minutes against Aberdeen in the cup final, and a lot of the atmosphere will be a lot different on Saturday, because obviously at Hampden we had more than half the stadium. It was always going to be the case that Aberdeen were going to come out the traps and try to make it as physical as quickly as possible, and what we managed to do is take that like a sponge and get on with playing football. Eventually we kind of matched them toe for toe, matched them blow for blow in terms of physicality, especially middle of the park, and central to that was Sterling, just by his presence. And it's kind of the same tomorrow, because, as you say, Celtic will come out, the crowd will demand it, and if we can just get a physical foothold in the game, and even more of a physical foothold in the game, and by that I mean that actually we take the physical game to them in the early doors, then that could be a way of kind of turning the tide towards us for the rest of the game. So that is why I like Sterling in this new position that Clement's found about him. And I think Lundstrom, and this is regardless if Clement was here or Beale was here, a lot of our past um, disappointments against Celtic, I've put largely at the door of Lundstrom not turning up, to be blunt, and being subpar, because you can't have a player that's as influential on your game as Lundstrom was under Beale, and is even more so now, and for him not to bring it. And I know we're harking back a wee bit here, but you go back to the Scottish Cup semi-final under Van Bronckhorst, and Lundstrom was absolutely fantastic, and you got the real John Lundstrom that day. Physicality, football, aggression, the full shebang. We've seen that lately from him again and again and again consistently. So if he plays on Saturday, I'm hoping that whatever the injury is, that it doesn't hamstring him to the point where he's compromised. Because I truly believe that if we get our midfield two, and by that I mean Lundstrom and Sterling, or Lundstrom and a Jack, or whoever it is, if we win that battle, I think we'll win the game, because everything's building from there. In our play, you can see it. We're conceding the least chances in the league. We've had the best defensive record. That's kind of creeped up in us since Clement came, and we seem solid defensively. set pieces as well, believe it or not. We're actually looking a wee bit more solid around that as well. And I think it's all to do with whoever occupies the midfield. So we'll see what happens. If they're fit, then great. If they're no fit, then what we're looking at, Cammy, we're looking at potentially, I don't know, Leon King stepping in there. He's kind of made cameos as he come off the bench. I always thought he would be a good midfielder, but it's a big ask for a young guy like that to come in and play such a central role. Who else have we got? I'm trying to think. There's no. You maybe get Dowell dropping back when and playing it as one of the kind of middle two, as he did against Motherwell.
And played well.
He
There's
did play
no, there's
well, and
no,
I
there's no
was,
doubt about that. You
yeah,
can't criticise him for what he was able to produce within that. And it's always interesting because I think, when we've spoken before, and I want to come on to Cyril Dessers in just a moment, so I won't occupy too much of this, topic with him. But I'm always interested, Andy, when I see players who have maybe not been playing that well, maybe not featured that much, but they've come in, and then they get a goal under their belt. The spirits are up. It's why, again, you kind of flipped and flopped between that idea of the county game being postponed was a little bit unfortunate, because you kind of want the momentum to continue. You don't want a break in play if you've got a player who's scored a goal, is feeling good, he's in there, he's contributing. You want the you know what it's like. You want the next game to come quickly if you're in that kind of form and stuff as well. But I think if Dowell does feature, then I think, first of all, I think he's entitled to be able to do that. I think that he doesn't have anything to prove, and that's almost interesting when you consider it didn't look like he was going to feature under Clermont, and I think, as I'd kind of discussed in last week's extra, actually, it does show a degree of character that, when you are then selected, pretty much because of circumstances of injuries, suspensions, whatever, but whenever you're brought in and you then deliver, you're not in there just ticking a box. You're in there, and maybe there's a bit of grit in there. Maybe he's got something between his teeth that turns around and says, actually, do you know what? I'm going to show you why you've made a mistake in not using me before now. Whatever it is, we can absolutely benefit out the back of it. And if he continues on with that performance, then I'd be grand with that. But between him, you mentioned Leon King there. I understand, Anfield. I get the whole point of this before I say it. But there's also a part of me where you can't have players who freeze in these types of games. Now, I'm not saying that he would. I just think it's a really big ask. And I
oh,
think that's maybe where you're coming from with it as well.
oh, absolutely. I mean, I think Leon King will be a great player for Rangers, but I think he's still to find his plays. I think I've said in other pods, it's really hard for a young centre half to play in Scottish football, especially for Rangers, because there's not much room for a mistake. Whereas if you're just that wee bit further up the park as a holding midfielder, which I think Leon King could play no bother, and I know he does it for Scotland under 20s, under 21s now and again, and I remember Kevin Thompson talking about him years and years ago when that was his position with Rangers. So I mean, that would be quite left field to see Leon King come in. I think Dowell, if Lundstram doesn't make it, will be in that middle of the park. I think what you're saying about Dowell's correct. I think he's suffered from the fact that he is listed probably as a number 10. And when you look at our squad, obviously you've got Cantwell. Clermont seems to like Lammers for whatever reason, right? It does. And I think he's been well down the pecking order. And when they're making their cuts to say, right, this is what we want to happen in January, I think Dowell would have been on the, open to offers. And he's came in, he's played that wee bit deeper. And what you can see from, without question, is his quality on the ball, and his left foot is actually excellent. And he's actually got an eye for a pass that nobody else in the team has got. He can thread balls through, and he can look for through balls from deep. He was kind of like a quarterback in Sunday against Motherwell. He can do things that nobody else in the team can do, but he's obviously got a wee bit of something lacking in terms of covering ground. Strangely, for a guy's size, physicality, I don't think it's his strong point, and therefore, when he's playing at that place at the pitch, it's not ideal. But that's where Sterling kind of complemented him. And we didn't lose anything on Sunday against Motherwell because of that. We actually gained from it, so it's quite a good combination. So we'll see. If Lundstram plays, I think it'll be Lundstram and Sterling. I would have no fears. You mentioned Adam Devine. I'd have no fears about putting young Devine in. He's been very solid defensively every time I've seen him in the Rangers jersey, the first team. I think attacking wise, he's obviously nowhere near the same kind of player as Barisic or even Yilmaz, but defensively, I always found him quite steady, and sound. The problems occur, Cammy, or the dangers occur when you've got a lot of youngsters in the team, and but a lot for Rangers, it's 2 or 3, and I would expect young McCausland, who's been a revelation, to start 100% on Saturday. So if you've got him and Devine on either wing, and then you might, as I say, have to play Leon King at some point during the game, that can be the wee small differences in terms of what you were talking about, experience and guile, and just, been there and done it, that can tip things against you. So it's very finely balanced. But what I'm looking for, Cammy, and I'm saying this with my fingers crossed, is I'm looking for a wee bit of gallousness, because we've kind of earned it, right? And under Clement, you can clearly hear and see and feel the difference in mentality that he is imposing upon so many of those players. And part of that must be the contempt of Celtic at their own place, because we kind of got that at a stage with Gerrard, and that was fundamental in us turning a tide, turning a corner, and actually winning games there. I would like to see get something tangible in that regard on Saturday. What would I take that, as you know, and everybody knows, is how the game goes early doors. If we score the first goal, then we'll grow in stature. If they score first, then it's going to be a big ask.
I think it's interesting because this is me with my sensible head on, by the way. I'll absolutely disagree with
Really?
my own opinion in about 12 hours after we've finished talking about this. But what's interesting, I think, is when you look at if you take a step back and you look at what this game means, right? So I think I'd said to you and a few of the other podders and stuff in the build up to this, and I said this to you, their drop in form is going to dictate two things. Firstly, no away fans, that happened, and then some sort of peace with the Green Brigade, because they want to be able to try and create an atmosphere in the build up for the Old Firm game. They want to be able to try and get everyone on the same page. And let's face it, they were an unhappy house, and now they've tried to piece that all back together again. And for me, it's there is no doubt there is smacks of desperation in there. I think, as you've said already, they'll come at us with a fever pitch. I understand all that. We have to be able to try and stand up to these things. But we've now positioned ourselves, and in no small measure, to Philippe Clement, by the way. I think 28 out of 30 points he's got within the league. We obviously already have the League Cup. So we've absolutely got the momentum. I'd love to be able to go there and win, but unlike where we were 3 months ago, thinking about this game, thinking about next time we were obviously going to play them domestically, we're not in a must-win scenario any longer.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about and obviously some of the tidbits that we're talking about there in terms of selection. So I totally agree with you. I would play McCausland. I don't necessarily have a problem with Devine and King either, but for anything else, it means that you're getting experience within an Old Firm game that isn't fraught with tension, because it's not a must-win for us. But what I'll say to you just now, Andy, and again, I will put my head on the line with this. It'll feel must-win to them, because they want to be able to try and calm everything down, given the fact that they've obviously dropped points recently.
Yeah.
They'll want to try and get back into consistent winning ways. And listen, do you know what I mean? They love nothing more than trying to put it against us. That's fine. And I think let them deal with that drama and that furore and everything else as well. Let our players come in, play their game, and just not get swept up in it. And I think for some of the younger players, those less experienced as well, in dealing with an Old Firm games, I think that would give them some very strong experience in it.
No, that's a extremely fair and insightful assessment, Cammy. The fact that in the past, in fact, most games we have been playing catch up, and to the point where we go into these games knowing that it's kind of do or die. We were going into the games where we knew that if we lost, in the heart of hearts, it was over. Right, and it's a hell of a position to be in, but it's been of our own doing, because they've been relentless and we've been dropping points where we shouldn't. And you're right, and it was one of the points I was going to make coming on to the show today, is that we don't need to go hysterical if this doesn't go to plan on Saturday, because we're in a decent position, and so what are we, 5 points behind them just now with 2 games in hand. So if they win, then it takes away that kind of incentive to go top pretty soon, right, in the first quarter of 2024. But it's no insurmountable given what we've seen and what the run of form we've been on. It would be nice to actually keep this run of form going. It'd be sensational, actually. But we're going to have missteps over the course of the season, and they'll come on just like you have at any other season we've ever won or come close to a win in the league. So it is a case of there is breathing space here, and I'm hoping that along with what I was talking about earlier on about this kind of gallus nature of actually playing our game the way we want to play it without any fear, um, we need to know that if we come off that part on Saturday and they have one, well, they'll get a severe boost for it. I think it'll be an unexpected boost because they've been poor. I mean, for the first, you know how poor Celtic are by if I'm watching them or no, because if they're good and they're motoring, I don't want to watch them. But if they're struggling, then I watch them because you can see, you know, echoes of times when we've been the same, you know, where we're getting by, but, you know, things aren't quite clicking and you really, really, really know deep down there's something not quite right. So that's where they've been. There's frailties there. There's misfiring all over the park, especially attacking wise, and I'm hoping that carries on into there. That seed of doubt that they've got anywhere in their squad just manifests itself into allowing us to get the upper hand. And we're talking about Divine and that. I mean, Ben Davies at left back. I know I've said this before, and again I get ridiculed, but I would have no qualms playing Ben Davies at left back. I don't know if Clement will see him as such, but if we really want to solidify and make sure we've got a left-sided player on that side just to give the balance, then he would be an option as well. And they're, I mean, we talked about Welsh, we talked about Scales. They're no youngsters by any manner of means, but they're no what we've faced in the past in terms of centre half pairings. And you've got Joe Hart having an existential crisis coming for crosses and all sorts. So I'm hoping all these wee bits come together to just tip it in our favour. I think it'll be a really even game, despite everything that we've said about form in the last month or two. I think it'll be a really close game. I think the atmosphere will be something to contend with. But the flip side of the atmosphere is I think that lot are ready to turn on their manager at any point if it doesn't go to plan.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, I think you've seen and heard some of that stuff already. I think some of them have been waiting in the long grass. The minute he was announced that we're going to come for him, as soon as he started dropping points, and you're starting to see more and more of that. But let's turn that away from them just for a second, and the comedy that obviously it would create if we do win on Saturday afternoon. But let's talk a little bit there, because you mentioned obviously centre halves and goalkeeper, and who we'd have up against that in the form of Cyril Dessers. It's an interesting one, Andy, right? So I think like everybody who does any kind of form of Rangers media, aside from the club, criticised Cyril Dessers across the course of this season. But I'm going to come in with a little bit of a different hat on this time, because you've got to give him credit where he's due.
Mm-hmm.
He's been able to perform. I felt, at least with one of his offsides at Fir Park on Christmas Eve, he was unlucky.
Absolutely.
An excellent finish, by the way. And as
Uh-huh.
far as he was concerned, he was, he had no idea about the flag. He was carrying on, and an excellent finish. But there's a part of me that, and I think I kind of stood up for him at this point, because I was very much like, you've got to be in those kind of positions. He's not, for me, Andy, as blatantly offside as he has been. So therefore, if he's going to play in the shoulder and he keeps producing, he's going to get a few goals out the back of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously Clement has started to tidy up a bit of that game. His 1-on-1, like his actual finishing, has got better, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because he does finish with the style of a guy who is banging him in, week out. And we know he's scored, but there's also been times as well where he's been frustrating and frustrated us. But what I would like to be able to try and see something which I do think has been a gap in his game. And I think that he has to be able to stand up. So if it is going to be Scales and whomever that he's going to be facing up against, he has to be physical with them. He has to be able to use his size, move them around a wee bit, and really just stand up to that. Because I think those Celtic defenders will look at him and go, I know if I get near him and he gets down, he's just going to be screaming for a free kick or something, and the referee's never given it, because that's something which I've seen him do a number of times, and it's frustrated the life out of me for a guy who goes down, barely been touched, if at all, and he's immediately looking for a free kick, or he's immediately talking to the referee. I get why he's doing it, but if I was one of his teammates or the manager, I'd be saying, right, put that in the can now. What you need to start doing is going up against these guys, and if they move you, you move them back, and you stand. And you said it earlier on, toe to toe with them. That's what you have to be able to do, because these things, whether he likes it or not, these things are a battle. And if you get not the first choice centre half pairing, you and I were brought up in Rangers teams, Andy, that saw that as a weakness and absolutely exploited it, because we had strikers up there who are like, I'm going to move him from here, there, and everywhere because I know that he can't follow me. I know he can't stand up to me. And I know this is a massive ask of Cyril Dessers. But again, I'm going to come back to that, using the old firm experience, the atmosphere, the frantic nature of it, all of that, nonsense that goes into these fixtures. And he has to be able to compete in it and be strong. That's what I want from him.
Um, so I don't
That
think
was my Christmas wish, by the way. That's what I wanted for Santa.
I don't think you're going to get it because I don't. I honestly don't think that he's got that in his game, because one thing, and I share this frustration with him, with you, is that he tends to be on the wrong side of being dominated by other centre halves, right? What
I think
and
he
I've
looks
been
weak. I
no,
think
I
at
don't.
times
I
he looks
don't.
weak.
Well, I know I don't. I think he looks like a European player playing in Scotland. I don't think there's much more to it than that. I don't think he's a weak player per se. I just think he's a player that is. Um, he's not as physical as perhaps we are used to watching leading the line. I mean, I've been absolutely scathing of him in pods and on Twitter, and I'm glad I said this a couple of weeks ago. This was pre-Betis and all that. I said something along the lines of, he's not getting any pace. His ball control's questionable. He can't hold the ball up. He's not got the strength, as you say. I round off all his deficiencies, but I said, but at some time in his career, he must have been a really, really good finisher, because you don't really have the career he's had today. He's been at decent clubs. He's played in Serie A. He's got a big move to us. You don't get that without at least having some finishing ability. And I said something along the lines that it would be really nice, if you could find that in the next couple of weeks, right? And lo and behold, he does it against Betis with that fucking chop goal. You know what I mean? That was a sensational goal. And I think, and he nearly repeated that in the cup final. And as you say, Cammy, the VAR decision against Motherwell was kind of farcical, because it's these, etch a sketch line drawings for shoulder to ground, and I just think they're a farce. And if you can't tell, then the goal should stand. There should be that benefited out thing for the attacker. So he's went from a player who, I don't think he's an answer, right? I still don't think he's an answer, and he's been too expensive and too high wages to be a third choice striker for us, right? If we sign other players, but he's went for being a total write off to having a wee bit of goodwill. In fact, having a wee bit more than goodwill, right? And you can see that there's effort there, and that's sometimes all you can ask for. Now, what I'm expecting to happen on Saturday against Celtic is that he'll do his running as he has done, right? He leads the press. I don't think he leads the press as well as Danilo. I don't think he leads the press as well as Sam Lammers, right? I think that's why Clement likes Lammers. I think he's formationally educated and disciplined, and he does what he's told in
I
terms
was
of
going to
that
say he does
aspect.
what he's told. Aye.
He's definitely what Clement wants in terms of shape when they're pressing, right? But what he's becoming is a wee bit of a nuisance. And so I'm going to take issue with what you said about him canning the histrionics and the fond doing the rest of it, because I think at this moment in time, much like Chris Sutton, because that's what 8% of his game was. I think it's actually something that he gets away with because the referees let play on or whatever, and doesn't think he's play acting. It's on the right side of um, what's the word, sportsmanship, right? It's on the right side of sportsmanship, but he's becoming a wee bit of a nuisance to other defenders, and we've seen it. And we've seen it against Celtic in the first league game, where he just gets in and he nicks the ball with their ankles. So I'm far I'm far more comfortable with Dessers than I was 2 months ago, because I just thought it was, I'd have taken any striker in Scotland before him. That's how bad I thought he was. But he's showing signs now that we are where we are with him in terms of squad and injuries and all the rest of it. But it wouldn't surprise me the slightest if he had a Bert Conterman moment on Sunday. wouldn't surprise me if Lammers are the same. There's always a time and place where somebody gets their moment. And I think he's earned it. If that comes around, I think he's earned it because we've seen this story before with other players. I know I keep going back to Haley. He couldn't lace Haley's boots right, but Haley in his first season, and folk won't believe this, he used to run out the park with the ball at his feet like some kind of cart horse. He used to have incredibly poor ball control because it took him a full season to get back up to speed. And I've kind of seen that with Dessers. I don't think he's going to turn into Matt Haley, by the way. That's not what I'm saying. But I've kind of seen the same thing happen to him where he's just getting a wee bit better and a wee bit more poise. And then you see Bettis in that goal and you're like, right, that's what you can do, Cyril. Keep doing that. That's all we need for you. So it's going to be a big ask for him because when you look at the injuries we've got, we're basically going to be going in with him, uh, obviously Sima on his left, who I think is going to be our biggest player on Saturday. I think how he plays will dictate whether we come away with 3 or 1 points. And then you're going to have young McCausland on the right, and then really the only other players you've got to come on are Matondo and Scott Wright that could play, and maybe Sam Lammers through the middle, but I don't think we'll see him play as a front striker. So there's a lot riding on Cyril Dessers enduring through in this game, and I really, really hope that we get one of these wee moments of guile because as we get to know players better, Cammy, I think we can now put down that he's a player of guile as opposed to a player of out and out power or explicit power or of explosive anything. He's no that kind of player. I think he's a guy that finds his space and sometimes takes it with good finishing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, it's totally fair, and maybe it's just me seeing a gap in his play and maybe just hoping that he can do a bit more with it because again I cannot stand players being physically dominated. Like
I agree.
there should be no reason for it, and there should be no reason for it when you're his size. But again, I mean, I totally agree with your points. I think you've hit the nail on the head when you say he does look like a European player playing in Scotland. But my counter argument to that would be, but I've seen these players, and I've seen these players look for fouls and plead to the referee, and all of that kind of thing as well. When they realise they're not getting it, they toughen up a wee bit, and then they just kind of go on with it. So it's tough. I get that. I'm not saying that it should be happening overnight, but he needs to realise how difficult that's going to be. If he's going to get dominated, he's going to get bullied, then he's going to have a much harder task in his hands.
But of course, Cammy, the referee will protect him.
Yeah, of course. It's always been interesting. We hear about all this noise about Rangers penalties and all that kind of thing in the build up to an Old Firm game.
Honestly, Cammy, I mean, I know we all just take it as Wara for Ducks back now because it is just so farcical. I mean, we had the Morelos goal last year at Parkhead, which effectively, if we scored that first goal, I think we win that game. The one that was ruled out for the push on Johnson. You've then got to the one this season where, again, despite Beale's frailties, I think if we scored that first goal that day, I think we go and win the game again. So this nonsense, this utter bullshit about conspiracies and Nick Walsh is a Celtic fan. This isn't something that's up for debate. But I don't think he's crooked. I think he's a reasonable referee, believe it or not. But that's nonsense that is mainstream now because you've got Chris Sutton and he should know better and Sky should know better. Dropping in wee chuckle vision moments where he'll reference penalties and all that kind of stuff. It's beyond the pale a wee bit now, and nothing would please me more if we get a last minute penalty and win the game and it wasn't a handball or VAR got it wrong. That I don't give a shit anymore. I'll take anything now.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you, but I think we're all sensible, right? That's the thing I would always say. Whenever you talk about Rangers fans and Celtic fans, I would always say we are sensible in comparison to a club which, let's face it, has put out a mandate to all of its various different, influencing points of call, whether it's in the mainstream media, whether or not it's in commentary, wherever you want to put it, that there has to be some sort of renewed dial up in the focus of the amount of penalties that Rangers gets awarded. And the reason why it's because that things aren't going their way and therefore there has to be some other excuse attached to it. So there you go. But we've talked about Cyril Dessers, but let's talk about a man who potentially could be replacing him for the next few months, Andy, and that is when Rangers have they announced on Thursday afternoon the loan signing of Fabio Silva from Wolves. Obviously, he's come in. He comes in on the 1st of January, so obviously he's not eligible for the Old Firm game, as we know. The manager said in the press conference on Friday afternoon that it was likely that he's going to be joining up with the training camp across in Spain. So pretty much doubt he's going to play any kind of part against Kilmarnock in the second. Probably unveiled to the fans, etc. So that'll be a nice wee treat for everyone going. What I found really interesting with this, right, and this is why it's great having you on as a guest, because you're the biggest believer in the fact that out in the Rangers fan base, everyone's either sugar or shite. So the takes that I've seen on this signing have been phenomenal, right? Because people are, well, he's played PSVs, he's played across Anderlecht on loan. Obviously, wasn't hitting much in terms of what he was doing at Wolves. Um, he's got a decent European caliber. Do you know what I mean? Played with Porto as well. But all that to one side, I am just quite happy to keep my powder dry in this young lad, because we want to be able to either have a massive skepticism on signings coming in. I understand why, right? Because we've had our fingers burnt. But I would also flip that in its head and say, well, see if you brought in a player who was pretty much just on the bench, or you brought in a loanee and he wasn't getting regularly featured at his parent club. Those two players that I've just mentioned are our best players of the season in terms of Butland and Seema. So not playing regularly, not maybe featuring as much, maybe being a little bit kind of out of the cold a little bit, doesn't mean it's a bad thing when it comes to you. Todd Cantwell, another perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think what we need to be able to try and do is let's just keep calm a little bit. Let's see what he brings into the squad. Let's see what he does in terms of his contribution. He's not going to be the only signing in this window, but what I will say is when the news broke on Thursday afternoon that we had got this deal done, pen to paper, etc. I think everybody just does the Fabrizio Romano thing. Now, as soon as he says it, it's like gospel. But I was so happy when you see the scarf pick, because we're doing business and we're not pissing about. We're getting them in the door early on. There's not to and froing. I was just glad at how efficiently this was done. And again, if he does join up with the group and heads across to Spain, etc., then he's in. He's in already. He's making sure that he's starting to show what he can do within training, and he's given us another option, certainly in an area of the park where we really, really need it.
Aye. And I know you're expecting me just to finish up the pod here nice and put it in a wee bow with a couple of minutes chat. If you're on a video call here, you'd see me unrolling my diatribe that I'm about to launch into, because
Like a scroll. That's what you're
it's a
saying.
big scroll, that's the word. Because the sugar and shade thing, right? I think it's kind of football fans the world over, but we're pretty bad for it, right? There's very, very few voices of reason, and I know I get that flung at me as if, well, Andy's the voice of reason. It's because I sit in the fence. It's not because I'm some kind of wise old man. I just sit in the fence and say, right, well, actually, let's wait and see, because a couple of things happened here, right? You're right. We've done business earlier than the window opening, right? And we've went out in January is a difficult time, right? You don't need to be a supersonic professor to know that the January's a bad window to do a lot of good business. It's difficult. And what we've done is we've went out and we've picked up a player who fits the criteria exactly of what we're looking for. A front man who I don't think he'll have any issue with physicality. He's a big boy. He can play right at the front of the team, or he can play in behind, or he can play wide. Right, ideal. Number of things we can do with him. He's 21. He's got a point to prove. He's come with a very, very high reputation, which is taking a wee done the last couple of seasons. Ergo, if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't be getting him, right? Sorry to break that to some Rangers fans, but we're not in the position to sign players who are at the top of the game and are wanted by the best clubs in the world. This is why we've got them. And it's called value. It's called value. Todd Cantwell was value. Jack Butland was value. Who else? Umpteen players that we could class as value, right? And you're going to get hits and misses because that is the market we operate in. the other thing to take into consideration here is that Niels Coppin, who's obviously the head of recruitment, has been an influence here because he's came in, and although I don't think he's officially started with us, right, but he's come in and he obviously said, look, there's an opportunity here for Fabio Silva, and he's contributed to that, and Old Clermont will have contributed to that, and we've made it happen in the face of competition against clubs who are our peers and probably above us. You know, teams in far better leagues, top 5 leagues, and we've managed to get them in. So I think it's a really good bit of business. I think it's about as good a bit of business as you'll get at this time of year for Rangers, and he might be a flop. He could be an absolute sensation that we're all in tears when he leaves us. Right. The point is that this is a better signing than Shankland for me, right? Because I think for the duration of what we need him for, which is from now at the end of the season, because we've got an objective to do, which is to go and win the league and get as far in Europe as we can. I think he's far better equipped on both those fronts than Shankland, as much as I like Shankland, right? And they're going to want, I think they'll want 2 or 3 million. I think it's a non-starter with Shankland. So I'm delighted with it. And just on Niels Coppin, it kind of proves a point that, so I often get a bit of stick, Cammy, because I used to defend the board. I don't know if you used to hear that, right? But I used to defend Stuart Robertson and people like that and say, right, well, they're doing their job and their remit. And I think we've seen since John Bennett and Bisgrove came in that one of the kind of structural identifications he made is that him, him as in Stuart Robertson and Ross Wilson, they're probably stretched too thin, and we've had to get people in to do specialisms now. So we've got a guy who has literally a head of recruitment. He's aided and abetted by the boy Craig Robertson, who does the football operations. So that's Ross Wilson's job split in two. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say you're seeing a wee bit of the benefit of that already, because you've got a guy that's a specialist come in and he's be able to identify Silva and say, I've got the connections, I know where he's at and what he fits in with the team. That is a small note of progress that we need to take to heart, because if you can do that repeatedly over a couple of years, that's where you get to John Bennett's point about fixing the recruitment, because obviously that's where we'll fail. But your point about Sugar and Shite is fundamental. Give the boy a chance, wait and see. It doesn't need to be the best player in the first week he plays in February, right? If he contributes and gives us 5, 6, 7 key goals between now and the end of the season, it's been worth it. And Seema is the point in case. Out of all of our signings at the start of the season, when we're watching the friendlies, Cammy, sure we were watching Seema and we're like, this guy's not very good. He's not as good as I remember. He looks like a fish out of water. He was lost, you know. The players were shouting and balling him, telling him how to take positions up. Look at him now. He's our best attacker. So we just need to let these players bleed in. And I was hoping for a good loan signing, because what we should be using the loan system for is players above the level that we can normally buy, and we get a wee taste of them for a wee while. Seema is turning out to be that. I'm hoping Silva turns out to be that. Running the mill loan players are no use. It's just a waste of loan for me. So there you go. That's my mini diatribe. So stop making your mind up on players before you've seen them. Have faith in the new structure. Just because somebody signs somebody doesn't mean they're did. I mean, we talk about Beale and Dessers and Lammers as bad as they were, right? But does he get the credit for Seema? And who else have we signed? Sterling, you know. So I think I just a wee bit less hysteria in terms of the recruitment. But I know, and you know, and the rule of the jungle is that unless you do it in the park, that's all that really matters. Nobody can argue otherwise.
No, and listen, I mean, all of your points aside from defending Michael Beale are valid. No, you're right, and again, it's just about allowing him a chance to be able to bed in. But there's a direct connection, Andy, between our lack of league success and how much we expect players to be able to try and come in and deliver something, because we want to be able to look at it towards trophies. We want to be able to look at the silverware that we're amassing, and we haven't been blessed with it. So at the end of the day, it's why we get to a stage where we almost become so hyper fixated on this idea of a player has to come in and hit the ground running, and this is what
Yes.
he has to do. I get it. I totally understand it. I'm exactly the same, but a little bit older, a little bit wiser. I think I've just kind of learned to say, right, I do get why he needs to be successful, but no football club in the world is going to have 100% success rate in its incoming personnel. Not in the same way that not every single player that you buy can then be sold for 3, 4, 5, 6 times the value. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fashion Sakala is currently getting 100 grand a week. No Rangers fan in the world would have paid him that if he'd asked for it at Ibrox. This is
Yep.
just the way how the football circle of life, I call it, Andy.
That's a very apt thing. I mean, I've spoken about this on the podcast today with Andy Barnett about football transfers. Celtic are currently sitting, and on Saturday as we record this, they're probably going to play Brian Welsh. Is it Brian Welsh? No, he used to play for the United. What's the boy Welsh? Stephen Welsh. Stephen Welsh and Liam Scales at centre half, right? They spent how much? £8 million on two centre halves in the summer. So the difference that between Rangers and Celtic over the last period, all right, our recruitment hasn't been exactly stellar, but we operate in a different fishbowl because, as you've just said, Cammy, our players come in and there's an absolute pressure that they must provide, they must perform immediately. We've got no room for error whatsoever. Whereas if you're winning things and you're playing well and you're actually top of the league most of the time and the pressure's off, you can allow your club to have, for lack of a better phrase, project players come along a wee bit. And Celtic have had that luxury over the last 10 years for all different reasons, but mostly because we've been nowhere in terms of putting pressure on them. So it would be good, that this will be one of the byproducts, that if we can get ourselves in a position where we become the dominant team for a season or two, God willing, right, then that allows us to not get fixated and, I think the phrase you use, a good phrase, something hyper sensitive or something like that, on players that are maybe being signed and are not contributing. So, because that's how you get the best of them. Eventually, they get enough chances to come through and develop, or else, you cut your losses. But I think we've got a manager that understands all that dynamic. I think the head of recruitment changes things as well, because I think the recruitment will be better, because that's where it all starts, obviously. But as far as Fabio Silva goes, I don't think you get a better loan signing in our position than that right now.
No, I agree. And listen, he's going to come in. We'll see what he can do, and he's going to get game time, because again, like you say, we know that there's definitely we're not blessed with depth in our striking positions at the moment. So yeah, he will definitely get his chance. That will do us for this week, folks, and this year. David will hopefully be back with you on Monday, New Year's Day, with the flagship, if we can stir him awake from what I'm fairly sure will be like a sausage roll induced coma, unpacking everything that's going to happen across the weekend. If you can't wait for that, however, why not come over and join us on our Patreon network, where you'll get loads and loads of Rangers content, which is ultra handy given the fact we're about to head into a winter break. So even if the Rangers aren't playing, Heart and Hand doesn't stop. You'll still get your daily updates. You'll still get tons of magnificent shows with some incredible podders like Mr. McGowan here and a whole host of others. So jump on over to patreon.com/Heart and Hand. Thank you to Zenith Coins, our Heart and Hand Extra Show sponsor, for all their support across the course of the season thus far. Thank you to Mike Lee and Paul Myers as well, our executive directors down in London. And also, and I couldn't finish the show without giving the best thanks of all to my very special guest, Mr. McGowan. Andy, what did you say you were at? Your battle fever? You were at 4. Has it went up a notch since we've had a chat about it?
Because you're talking about the board and that, it's been up to a 5.5.
There you go. Then that's all that had to happen.
But,
I bet you I can throw you a profit and loss sheet, and you'll go up to a 6.
Listen, all the listeners out there, just Google the $6 million man. If you're still thinking, what is that reference? It's no Danilo, it's no Michael Ball, the football player. It's actually a TV programme for before I was born, before Cammy was born. I was really thrown by that. In fact, I should have stopped the pod at that point, Cammy. I've got to be honest. $6 million man's sensational.
If you don't know who the $6 million man is, go and ask your dad, and then your dad will say, "Don't bother me now. I'm watching YouTube clips of old fun games."
Don't bother me now. I'm watching Dave or whatever that programme is. Forces TV. I'm watching Airwolf. Go away.
Exactly. Right, folks. Listen, most importantly as well, after the game, make sure that you enjoy it no matter what. Let's face it, we know these things are always tense and stuff, but you've got the new year coming up as well. So from all of us here at Heart and Hand, have a very, very merry time across the weekend. Have a wonderful and happy new year when it comes, and we will speak to you again next week. Thanks all.